This podcast is brought to you by the North Dakota Petroleum Foundation. From heating our homes and powering our vehicles to cell phones, clothing, and medical equipment, oil and natural gas makes everyday life better. North Dakota Oil and Natural Gas, advancing the possibilities. Learn more at ndpetroleumfoundation.org. Welcome to the Plain Talk Podcast. I am your host, Rob Port. It's been a while since I've done one of these. I was doing a lot of live streams with the podcast and everything, and I don't know. There's something about doing it live. I think it lost some of what I really liked about doing a podcast, which was that it was always a really relaxed conversation, and it's hard to be relaxed when you're live. Not that I'm spending a lot of time going back and editing these things after the fact, but I just think it's a different dynamic when it's not live. I like kind of the truer podcast sense. So from that perspective, this is kind of the way we're going to do the podcast going forward. My guest today is Tony Bender, who you'll probably recognize. He, like myself, is a columnist, writes for the Forum News Service, as I do, published in newspapers across the state. Tony is also an author. He's a longtime newspaper publisher himself, and someone I like to think of as a good friend, which might surprise people because I am very conservative and Tony is very not conservative, and yet somehow we get along pretty well. Tony, how you doing?
Well, I'm doing good, but I'm trying to decide: am I supposed to be nervous or not?
I don't know. You can feel however you want to feel.
All right.
Nothing to be nervous with me. So what I wanted to talk about today, Tony, is that we have a special session of the legislature going on in Bismarck. And there's some pretty consequential things to be decided. There's about a billion plus in federal dollars. I think Biden bucks is kind of what the lawmakers are jokingly calling it. Redistricting is obviously the impetus for the session to begin with. We have to redraw the district lines, and anytime you're doing that, there could be a little controversy or a little bit of whatever around it. But that's what we're doing. So the first day of the special session, though, featured a rally. They called it the We the People rally. It was organized, frankly, out of where I live, Minot. It was a group of Republican district chairs. For some reason, some guy from Ohio who's been subpoenaed in the January 6th investigation was the guy who pulled the permit for the rally in Bismarck. But this rally happened, and to me, it's a manifestation of something that I've been talking about for more than a year now, which is a pronounced divide, not just in the conservative movement and the Republican Party nationally, but locally. I think North Dakota is very much a place where that divide is happening. And so I watched that rally, and even after the fact, I mean, the rally was very much, the organizers were upset with me. Jay Lundeen, he's a District 40 North Dakota Republican Party chairman from up here in Minot. He was one of the organizers of the rally. He, at a reception after the rally, he kind of went on a rant about me, which I shared with Tony before the show, and I'm going to play some of that audio right now.
And here's my last thing, because I can go on and on for a while. You guys, once you get to know me, you'll look at me and go like this. Okay, buddy. But I don't do this very often, but I want to call out someone, and his name is Rob Port. Okay? Guys, you know what? We're going to get further with honey, but I tell you what, sometimes people got to know in a real respectful way that, man, you're on Jupiter, brother. Your 10-person audience, it might be entertaining to you, but pretty much annoying to us. You're a Republican, Rob Port. Rob Port said that the organizer of the event was so disappointed by the lack of turnout. Oh my God. Rob Port and Minot. He talked to me, whatever. I was so disappointed by the lack of turnout. Jupiter, where you get stupider. No, I shouldn't say that. Yes, I should. Anyway, anybody want to send an email or a Facebook? I don't get on Facebook. If you Facebookers, Facebook that guy, Rob Port. Right. Say, Rob, you need to show up, Rob. and talk to people and just don't make assumptions of things you don't know, Rob. Okay, Rob? Rob, what I want you to do, Rob, is put your big boy pants on, Rob, and be honest with yourself. Rob, you have a liberal ideology, Rob. Fun to pick on. You're so silly, Rob. Rob, I bet you there was like 5 people in here, right? And nobody was standing up clapping at what I'm saying about you, brother. So go to the Democratic Party, quit being a poser, good night.
So Tony, that's what Jay Lundeen thinks of me, basically. And, you know, I'm a problem. And I what I'm trying to do, and I'll tell you, I'm talking to a lot of Republicans, I'm talking to a lot of people, and there's a lot of people saying just, what is going on? I mean, you have the North Dakota Republican Party, which I think, whatever else you want to say about them, have been a potent political force in North Dakota for a long time. Suddenly seems to be fracturing. What are you seeing? What's going on?
Well, I think there is a fracture going on, Rob. What I'm not sure of is if the more radical Bastiat part of it is pulling the more moderates to the right at all. I just don't have a good handle on that.
I think overall Republicans have been moving. I think part of that is you can almost blame it on Democrats. I mean, North Dakota Democrats, outside of a few pockets where they're successful electing lawmakers, outside of that, I mean, they're a non-entity in North Dakota. And I think anytime you kind of leave one party on its own with no really meaningful challenge, there's going to be less impetus to moderate overall. I actually think, and maybe you can disagree with me on this, I think one of the reasons why the North Dakota Republican Party has been successful for as long as it's been successful is that it, in many ways, has been a very moderate, very pragmatic party in the aggregate, on the whole. You look at leaders like John Hoeven, Ed Schaefer. These have been very successful, very pragmatic people, and I think that's because they haven't been very ideological, have managed to hold on to office for a long, long time. Now, obviously, there's national trends, and we have the whole thing where the National Democratic Party has kind of stopped caring about rural America in some ways. Maybe that's too glib of me to say, but I mean, there's some of that going on. But I mean, I think one thing that's allowing the Bastiat caucus, or this faction of sort of Trump-aligned, and when I say Trump-aligned, I mean like the hardcore Trump, not the people who voted for Donald Trump because they didn't want to vote for Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden. I'm talking about the people who still think Donald Trump won the election and believe in QAnon and all that other stuff. That wing of the party, I think, is emboldened by the fact that it's not very hard for Republican candidates in North Dakota to win elections. They don't really have a lot to worry about. And so there's a feeling that I think they could kind of, I don't want to say allow, that's the wrong word, but they can indulge in what's going on. Does that make sense?
Well, I think so, and I think you're spot on about the Republicans being moderate. If you're sitting out in looking at your tax bill, sitting on the school board, in a rural community, the Republicans have been pretty liberal with their spending. So you're right about that. It has been pretty moderate. And I guess if you've got no one to fight, you start fighting amongst yourselves.
I mean, that could be a part of it. Although, I mean, we're seeing this same, sort of what's happening in North Dakota. We're also seeing that in places where politics is far more competitive than they are in North Dakota. So, I mean, that's not all of it. But when you watch this video of this I have this whole theory, and I actually spent my whole morning writing a column about this, but I worry that the part of this, and we're going to talk about this in the context of what's happening on the left, but I think it's kind of happening on the left, on the right. We're going to talk about it in the context of what's happening on the right. I think it's happening on the left as well, but I worry that social media has created this expectation, because we know, like the Facebook algorithm is basically designed to just feed us what we want to hear. Right, to create this isolating echo chamber. I mean, we've had Frances Haugen, the Facebook whistleblower, has talked about it. I mean, at this point, I don't think that's in dispute. And what I worry is that people, because Facebook and other social media platforms pervade our society. I mean, it's everywhere. People do garage sailing on there. It's how people interact with one another. It's how people get their news. It's everywhere. I think people have taken this expectation that the world should conform to what they want it to be, have taken that into the real world. And when the world's not like that, they get very upset and very angry. I think that's very much a part of this. I think when I'm seeing Mr. Lundin ranting about me, and he's upset about me, and he's got a room full of people cheering on, and I think what they're mad about, and perhaps with me more so than most, because I'm a conservative, and maybe they feel stabbed in the back because I'm not going along with it, but they're upset at somebody who's not willing to tell them what they want to hear. I think that's driving so much of the consternation in politics today.
It is. It's kind of ridiculous that you have to speak the party line whether or not you believe it. So you have to be anti-vax. And you have to be anti-mask if you're a real Republican. You have to believe that Trump won the election if you're a real Republican. It's unfortunate. We're not allowing debate. We're canceling each other within the party. But I think it's madness, and I think it's disconcerting in North Dakota. That kind of rant, where the guy is getting in the camera's face to go after you. That's disconcerting. That would bother me.
I mean, I'll admit, I don't want to make me, and I don't want to put myself at the center of this. I mean, that's obviously something that happened to me. I don't think that Rob Port is the end all be all of any of this, but for whatever reason, he chose to single.
I'll agree with that.
Right. Yeah. Believe me, I agree with it as well. One thing I think that I'm pretty good at is I don't have any problem having a low opinion of myself sometimes, but what's that old line about I wouldn't belong to any club that would have me as a member? That's kind of my view on life. Groucho Marx. But so the thing about it is Mr. Lundin, I mean, he's singling me out, but I think that's what I'm trying to find out is what is motivating these people to behave in this way. And I mean, I think that's it. They don't like people who are going to tell them what they don't want to believe. And on the other side of because you say, it's like you have to be anti-vax, you have to be anti-mask, you have to think that Trump won the election. And then I look over on the left, and it's you have to think that the government should be tying people down and putting needles in arms. Like you have to be for mandates and all of this stuff. You can't take a moderated position saying, I'm very much pro-vaccine, but gosh, maybe a government mandate as a practical matter is gonna do more harm than good. You say that, you get called an anti-vaxxer. There's no room for nuance anywhere, Tony.
Well, I would say, yeah, we're very polarized. We have some very extreme positions. It's remarkable that we're choosing a health issue as the hill to die on. It's ridiculous. It's a public health issue. It's about more than your freedom. It's about, should you have the freedom to infect and sicken and kill other people? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And, I see the protests, but the reasoning is so shallow. It's freedom. Well, freedom extends as far as your fist. And it's remarkable the amount of shallow thinking that go into these protests.
Yeah, I don't understand. Listen, I believe in maximizing freedom to the greatest extent that we can. I mean, generally, I think the great challenge of politics and government is trying to figure out how a diverse society can live with their differences, right? Like how can you allow me to just live my life the way I want to live it, and Tony can live his life the way he wants to live it, and just allow that to the greatest degree possible. Now, obviously, because we live in society and we live in cities and we have, we have to organize ourselves in ways, and we have to create public policy at those where our lives intersect one another, so that, if I have a tree that's hanging over your property and you want me to cut the tree down and I don't want to cut the tree down, that we don't settle that dispute with guns. That's, that's kind of the challenge of politics. It's hard, right? It's hard.
Well,
we all have to compromise along that way.
Exactly.
And one of them is when you have this airborne, virus that is highly contagious. To me, it's not unreasonable to, as a society, say, listen, during the interim here, we're going to have some rules to try to tamp this thing down so that eventually we can all get back to living our lives again. I don't see that as some great affront to liberty. Now, I don't like vaccine mandates. I think they do more harm than good, and I'm a little disconcerted by the precedent that sets. If the government can force a needle in my arm, what else can we do? I don't think it's unreasonable to say, boy, is that a line we want to cross? Is that a place we want to go? I don't really want to. I would rather people just choose to be and be persuaded and get vaccines. I mean, that's what I would like. But maybe that's very Pollyannish of me, because we run up against this intransigence and it gets nowhere.
Well, theoretically, we wouldn't want people to drive drunk or whatever, but they do. So we have to have rules and we have to have enforcement.
Right. As Madison wrote in the Federalist Papers, if men were angels, we'd need no government. But we know that's not true. We need government. And the eternal debate is, how far should that government go? And I don't have a problem having that debate. But I'm just not even. I don't know, Tony. I mean, I look at what's going on. I don't even know that you could say that it's policy driven. Do you understand what I mean?
No, I don't think it is. But I mean, it gives them a talking point. Look, I don't have a problem in an emergency that is affecting this country and the world with the government saying, okay, to large employers, we need to have your employees vaccinated. I don't have a problem with that under the circumstances. I mean, during wartime, we have, extreme measures that have to take place during a medical health crisis that is dragging us down and killing people. I think it's okay to have more extreme measures temporarily. I agree. I wish people would do the right thing or the smart thing, but it's just a weird hill to die on.
Well, it is, and again, I mean, I disagree with you. I don't like the mandate. I think it's a practical matter. I think what you're doing is you're giving the anti-vax people a talking point, right? Like where before you could say, listen, nobody's trying to force a needle in your arm. Now they could kind of say, well, yeah, you are. You're telling me I have to either get needled or lose my job. And you're telling employers this. And I mean, I don't even like that on the other end. Representative Rick Becker, Republican from Bismarck, had a bill, and it got shot down in delayed bills committee. We'll see if I guess he tries to bring it back on the floor today. But he has a bill that would go the other way, that would try to deny, like tax exemptions or tax credits from businesses that do issue a vaccine mandate. So it's like we have both sides here that are trying to deny people a choice. And to me, I want people to choose it, and I'm afraid that if you try to use force, right? Because I think this is always a problem with government. If you try to use force, you're going to get people who push back. You know, people who might otherwise have been persuaded. You're gonna inspire them to dig in.
You know, the reality is here, if you're in business, you want your employees not to be spreading a pandemic through your offices.
I agree.
Okay. So, what has the federal government done? They've done exactly what big businesses want. They gave them cover.
Sure.
So, this is no big hardship for businesses. They want this. They embrace it.
I'm sure.
Because it means they're getting back to normal.
The government made the decision for them. The government can be the bad guy. And the businesses.
Exactly.
And I understand that argument, Tony, but to me, that doesn't set aside the fact that you're telling some of these private businesses don't. I mean, some do. You're right. Some absolutely are happy that the government's doing this. Many aren't. And you're hearing from some of those business owners. And I don't know. I have a problem with that. And I think, Tony, sometimes we forget that if we try to force people to do things, you just entrench them. The optimum situation would be for us for people to choose. And listen, I think we also need to recognize we're maybe not doing as bad getting people vaccinated as this debate sometimes pretends. North Dakota, 57, the last time I looked, which was yesterday, I looked at the Department of Health's vaccine dashboard. 57% of North Dakotans have had at least one dose of the vaccine so far. I think it's like 52% or something like that are fully vaccinated. Now that we're opening the door to kids, we're going to probably see that number jump up into the 60s, maybe the 70s very quickly. That's pretty good. Mm-hmm. We didn't get there as fast as I wanted to. I know we didn't get there as fast as you wanted to. I wish it was quicker. But that's pretty good. We're getting there. I'm wondering how much consternation are we going to create by what? Moving the timeline forward 6 months? Like is that 6 months getting vaccinated, reaching vaccination levels we want 6 months faster? Is that worth the consternation that the policy's creating? I'm not so sure it is.
Well, I think no matter what, Rob, I think the science is moving forward. We've got a pill coming.
Yeah.
The effectiveness of treatments has evolved. Fewer people are dying. More people are getting educated. More people have lost someone or have been witness to somebody getting very sick or have been very sick themselves. So when you get burned, it tends to change your MO. And so I think we're going to come out of this one way or another.
Oh, sure.
We're not, forcing anything. Will it make a difference? How much of a difference will it make? I don't know. So, from that respect, you have an argument about mandates. Because, people change when they feel pain. That's humanity.
Sure.
If we feel pain personally, financially, or whatever, we change. Or we want to change things. And it's dumb. We're smarter than that. But that's just human nature.
Well, sure. I mean, at the end of the day, we're animals, right? And we react to our environment in the way animals do sometimes, right? Like if an animal starts running out of food in a certain area, they're going to move to a new area. If an animal feels pain, they're going to react to it in a way. Humans aren't that different. Our reactions and things may be more complicated and more nuanced, but in many ways it's the same. So you're right. And I think sometimes we get so caught up. This is what really worries me, though, is we get such a narrow view of the moment. And I think a lot of times, right and left, we lose sight of the forest for the trees, which brings me back to this We the People rally. I mean, I don't even know. it was interesting because one of the people who had watched Mr. Lundin's the video of Mr. Lundin. By the way, if you want to see the video where he gets right up in the, I have a column going up about it today called "On the We the People Rally." So if you want to watch the video, you can find it there. I have it embedded. But I mean, somebody watched that and then came to me and was accusing me, like, Rob Port, you stand for tyranny. And so I asked the question, like what specific position have I taken that, in your mind, equates to tyranny? And she told me, well, you support masks and you support vaccine mandates. And I said, well, I do support masks, but I don't support vaccine mandates. This person didn't even know, right? They just imagined. And this is somebody I know who I mean, follows me on social media, although she brags all the time about how she doesn't subscribe to the forum. So it's kind of funny, those people who, they're literally saying they can't read my column, but boy, they sure have a lot to say about it. And this person doesn't even really know what my positions are. And to me, that's even more troubling. Is it's already hard to have debates about things like vaccine mandates and everything else, social issues, abortion, all of these things that we spend all of this time to, that's really hard. Democracy is really, really friggin' hard. And the problem is on top of that, we have this extra layer of, to get back to what I'm talking about with the Facebook bubble, we have this extra layer on top of it, which is people just sort of living in their own version of reality. So we're having these debates, but we're not even talking the same language because it's almost like we're not even living in the same world anymore.
You know, we get assigned positions by other people
that
we may not have. I mean, are you tyrannical? Well, you cheer for the Yankees, okay?
Yeah, because they win relentlessly, Tony. All right, everybody loves a winner.
See, so there's truth to that argument. But yeah, it's I fight that sometimes where I get assigned a certain position.
Yeah.
I am a social liberal, but I consider myself a fiscal conservative, not insane, in that I don't see it as always just an expenditure, sometimes an investment, and that's a key word. But, to get through a debate and have to discount positions that you don't even hold is exhausting.
Well, it is. But I think that's the problem, is it becomes, because you're identified, you're a liberal columnist, which generally is true. I don't think that's an unfair characterization, but it's almost like when you're trying to like label music, right? Back in the days when we used to have music stores, remember that? You'd go in and there'd be all these like very weird categories, right? For me, it was CDs. That was in my heyday. It was, you would go in and you'd see all the CDs lined up. And I guess we still have music stores, right? Vinyl's a big thing now. But anyway, you go in and they try to like categorize the music, right? And I understand, like, they want to help you find the music you're looking for, but like, how do you categorize? Is this a blues musician, or like is this, what type of heavy metal music is this? Like, it's really hard. The world is a complicated place, and it's we're spending a lot of time being obsessed with simplistic explanations for complicated things. I'm sorry, go ahead.
We belong to parties and clubs and whatever, but we're all individuals. No two people completely think alike. I mean, anyone who's been married knows that. Look, we're individuals, and we lose sight of that. We get tribal, and within the tribe, then, when the emotions run hot, people are afraid to get into nuance or say, yeah, but I agree with this, but not that. We lose the nuance.
Yeah, I think you're right. So let's switch gears. We've kind of talked about this rally and everything that's going on there. What are you seeing in the special session? Are you tracking anything? Are you keeping an eye on anything in particular?
Very loosely. I have not read any bill. the critical race theory bill, I was somewhat surprised to see Wardner jumping on board with that. Because he strikes me as somebody more pragmatic and somebody who understands the reality that isn't even really a thing in North Dakota. What it is a political issue designed to get you votes in the next election. I mean, that's really what it is. It's posturing.
Yeah. Although I would argue that an issue could be both. I think it's possible to have genuine concerns about, when I look at something like the 1619 project, I think that was a deeply unfortunate. It was treated like an act of journalism. I don't think it was. I think it was an act of politics, an attempt to reshape something, and recognizing fully that, our historians have long had a debate about, topics like race and slavery and how important, these different things are and to our history and our society and all these things. Even understanding that, I thought that was unfortunate. And so I don't know. I mean, when I look at academia, I don't think it's unfair to say that this is a place that's dominated by one particular cultural or political point of view. And when, that begins to permeate our schools, I don't think it's wrong to be concerned about that. Now, what I worry, though, is that we're going to try to correct a doctrinaire attempt to influence the way we teach history with another doctrinaire attempt to lock in the way we've always taught history. I think these are very evolving things. And really what I'm looking for is honesty. And I think we're best going to get that in the aggregate from local control over schools, and not politicians passing bills, whether they're for or against quote unquote critical race theory. I really don't want the politicians to get involved. I kind of want school boards and parent teacher associations and everything else, as hard as that is sometimes, as we've seen from some of these recent school board meetings. I'd rather the issue be settled there than to have grandstanding politicians glomming onto it. I don't think that helps.
Yeah, that's exactly my point. I was at a school board meeting last night. I'll be at another one tomorrow night. My kid, I'm familiar with what's being taught. My brother is a teacher, a social studies teacher, and it just gets down to teaching the facts. And now, if you're taught the facts and you go out into the world and you extrapolate from that, gee whiz, when a race has been put so far behind, from the starting position, that they haven't caught up yet, well, that's a legitimate argument. And again, it's a generalization. Does it apply to everyone? No. Are all Caucasians doing great? No. I mean, it's so nuanced. But you just have to look at the history and be honest about it.
Sure.
And then look at society and be honest about it.
Yeah. And it's hard. Like when we have policy debates, I like to think of it when we're making policy, we're making it for the aggregate, right? We're making it for in a very general way, right? When you make a law, like the law just has to apply all the time. Like it's very hard. You could carve out exemptions and nuances or whatever, but it's hard. We make policy in the aggregate, but we experience it as individuals. And I think that's what happens with something like critical race theory, where you go and you could talk about, how white men have been at the top of the heap for most of history, particularly in European and North American culture. And that's a true thing. That's absolutely true. And you could talk about how people of color, black people and Hispanic people and everything else, have been mistreated. Native Americans have been mistreated and victimized, brutalized in so many ways. And that's also true. But then you can talk to one specific white person and tell them that they have white privilege and maybe their parents were meth addicts. You know, maybe they had to get up and dress in dirty clothes to go to school every day. If you're telling that individual that they have privilege, you know, that's as wrong as looking at a black person and assuming that they grew up in a ghetto with a single mom. That's not fair. And so that's what I really look for. I want to treat people as individuals. We do too much lumping people into groups. And I realize that's hard because that's kind of how we have to make policy. But I feel like we would all do better if we treated people as individuals more.
Well, at the bottom of this, Rob, they're fighting a battle against no one. No one is teaching critical race theory. It's not a thing in North Dakota. It's political grandstanding. Because, I mean, it's just not an issue.
Yeah.
So,
it's not an issue in the legislature. I agree with you. It's grandstanding. If you're concerned about what your local schools are teaching, go to the school board. Call up your local superintendent. Get some information. A lot of this stuff is available if you look for it, and you can find out what they're teaching. And if you object to something, show up at the school board meeting and respectfully, you know, engage in the process that way, understanding that there may be a lot of people out there who feel differently from you. But we can solve this problem. And you're right. I don't think we need grandstanding politicians coming in and attaching buzz, because it doesn't even have to be critical race theory to be problematic.
You know, be consistent. Don't sit there and say local control, local control, local control, and then when it's convenient, we're going to tell you what to do. You know, be consistent. Pick one side or another.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it is funny. I on the other hand, when we talk about property taxes, I love how local officials love to talk about local control until it comes time for somebody to be responsible for the property tax bills, at which point it's all the legislature's fault. Which never fails to amuse me. Local control, but statewide responsibility. What was that thing during the too big to fail era where it was privatized profit but socialized debt or something like that? General Motors should get, you know, they're a private company, they should get to keep their profits, but if they fail, then that's society's problem, right?
You know, that's been a policy in America for a long time. We don't recognize it. We don't admit it. But, oh yeah.
So let's talk about
bail people out all the time.
Let's talk about redistricting, which is the primary reason why the legislature's meeting. It seems like the big issue is the subdividing legislative districts. How do you feel about that?
I'm just going to confess to you, Rob, that has not been on my radar screen. So I don't know that I can speak knowledgeably about it, but I'd be interested to hear, you know, a breakdown of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm on the periphery, I'm following it, but I haven't gotten into the minutia.
So
and that's just fact.
So the idea is what the plan before the legislature now that they're working on, the one that was approved by the interim committee that was tackling redistricting, and now the full legislature has to approve it. What they approved is they subdivided 2 legislative districts. Now, if you're not up on your North Dakota civics, the way things work now is we have legislative districts, and each legislative district encompasses a geographical area, and the lines are drawn so that each geographical area has roughly the same population. And so actually what they're doing now is we just got a new census, they're redrawing the lines so that the apportionment remains relatively equal across the state geographically. But what they've done is each legislative district has a senator and 2 representatives. They're all elected to the same 4-year terms on the same ballot. Typically, the Republican candidates and the Democratic candidates all run together on a ticket. That's why in campaign season, you'll see all those yard signs with like 3 people's names on them. That's a slate of candidates that's running for those legislative seats, a senator and 2 representatives. What they've done is in 2 districts, District 4 and District 9, they have subdivided the House districts. So those districts would still elect 1 senator, but they would elect, there would be a divide. The legislature would be geographically divided, and then one half would elect 1 representative, and the other half would elect the other representative. Now, the reason for District 4 and District 9 is these are two reservations that are near Native American communities. District 4 encompasses the Fort Berthold, the 3 affiliated tribes, and District 9 encompasses Turtle Mountain. And so, the idea is by doing this, we're going to make it easier for Native Americans to elect one of their own. But Tony, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, well, if we're just subdividing those two districts, that means the people in those districts only get to vote for 2 lawmakers, whereas everybody else gets to vote for 3. I think whatever the intent, that seems like a very stupid idea. And I don't even know how it made it this far, frankly.
Well, I'm trying to wrap my head around it, and I'm thinking about it. I would be cautious about doing that. I understand what's going on there. I'd have to really look at this and think about this quite a bit.
Yeah.
The pros and cons of it. I understand the pros, the potential pros. And when you look at it, districting throughout this country is engineering in a lot of ways. I mean, when you see the map of districts, they've been engineered to either give one party, an advantage or another party a disadvantage, or to maximize your wins, minimize your losses. So this is certainly in keeping with that strategy. But should we be continuing with that strategy?
Yeah. And let's and to be honest, like this is, in terms of partisan outcomes, the redistricting plan I just described, I think would be a wash. If you District 4 is currently all Republicans. If you subdivide it and give a portion of it to the tribal communities, okay, maybe they're going to elect a Democrat to the House. But District 9 is all Democrats. And if you subdivide that, you're probably going to elect a Republican there where one wasn't elected before. So in terms of partisanship, it's a wash. I don't think North Dakota, if you look at the map, there's really not a lot of districts that are drawn all that. The weirdness on our map is that some of our rural districts are gigantic. Some of them are like the size of Connecticut. And it's, I mean, that's a problem with our rural. I mean, that's just where people in North Dakota are choosing to live. I don't know how we get around that. Like, we have to apportion these districts equally. About the only thing I think was we could add more legislative seats, which I wouldn't be against, but that's not on the table. But the larger issue is for instance, the tribes came in yesterday into the Delayed Bills Committee, and they had their own map where the Turtle Mountain tribe wants a legislative district that encompasses their land and also the Spirit Lake Sioux land. And the way they have it is this district that they've drawn has, Turtle Mountain, which is up along the Canadian border, and then it has like a little like piece of the district goes down to Spirit Lake, which is right by Devil's Lake. And Tony, if that's not gerrymandering, I don't know what is, right? I mean, isn't that what gerrymandering is where we're drawing the map to try to get a particular political outcome, and we draw it in like all these weird jigsaw shapes to make that work? I mean, to me, that's exactly whatever the intent. To me, that's exactly what we're supposed to be avoiding.
Well, I certainly understand it. I mean, both parties do it. Republicans have been much better at doing it. I mean,
Republicans have been much better at winning state legislative seats for a long time, and in turn controlling the redistricting process, I think, is probably where that came from.
Right. Well, we've pronounced the Republican Party dead several times in my lifetime, and as a party, they have been more organized, more grassroots, and have built from the bottom up a stronger structure, and have been successful for that reason. Strategically, they've they've been more successful.
I think that's true. Although I mean, obviously, and when you're talking about urban areas, I mean, Democrats dominate those places. So I mean, the same could be true. It's the rural urban divide, and that's a whole other topic we could get into. But I mean, generally, I just want the lines drawn fairly. I feel like what I don't understand about this map is how we get around the proposal that's on the table, how we get around the idea that if you live in District 4, you get one less representative than if you live in District 5, which is where I live, in Minot. I live in District 5. I'm going to be able to vote in the next election where they're on the ballot. I'm going to be able to vote for a senator and 2 representatives. But if this map goes through and you live in District 4, you're going to be able to vote for 2. How's that equal representation? That doesn't make a lick of sense to me.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see it play out.
Yeah.
I will. I promise you, I will dig in deeper. I wasn't following that particular aspect of redistricting.
Well, I've written about it, Tony. You're telling me you don't read every single one of my columns?
I don't read conservative stuff.
Oh man, I read your columns.
I will tell you, I do. Yeah, most of the time I do. I can't believe I missed it.
Yeah,
I apologize.
No, that's all right. And it was over the summer, and everybody was tuned out from politics over the summer, except for me because I'm a giant dork. So what's on your mind? I mean, you write every week. I know you and I both have the same job, writing these columns every week. I think people maybe don't. If you and I might be excused to dwell a little bit on our own challenges. It's hard coming up with stuff every week. Can you talk a little bit about how you find the things you want to write about?
Well, actually, North Dakota is so pugnacious lately that, that's pretty good ground. But, you write more than I do. So I write 2 columns a week. And one of them is, kind of a human interest one. But there's so much hypocrisy, which I think is a big target for me. And the lack of political honesty and logic is, a frequent topic. But, one thing I've been thinking about is this in South Dakota. Just when they're starting to dig into this Ravensborg, the attorney general who mowed down a pedestrian about a year and a quarter ago.
Yeah.
The sheriff who investigated dies. Now, seriously, that's where the conspiracy theorists ought to be jumping up and down. I mean, that seems convenient to me.
Yeah.
And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I'm just like, you're just like, really?
Yeah, coincidences
Really?
don't happen. The other thing that's kind of interested me out of South Dakota too is the Christy Noem's daughter and the appraiser permit, right? Who on earth thought that would turn into a hot like appraiser licensing would turn into this hot button issue? But I'm sorry, like that just doesn't happen, right? Like you don't call in the department head after your daughter was denied an appraiser permit into some meeting that your daughter who's denied the permit also attend. Like that doesn't just happen. Right? Like unless in the absence of some other explanation that the daughter had a reason for being there, that doesn't just happen, Tony. That's not just a coincidence. But getting back to this this partisan environment we live in, people don't care. I write about that, and to me, I think as an American, like that's an un-American thing, right? Like I'm sorry, you don't abuse. And I like to think it's a conservative thing. I'm sure you like to think of it as a liberal. You don't abuse the powers of your office that way. And if you do it, you don't deserve to hold that office. So I wrote pretty strongly about about Kristi Noem and the blowback I got from people that were just, oh, you can't, you're just threatened by a strong Republican woman and everything else. She's a politician. And she did this. Like, these facts are not in dispute. She owes us a thorough explanation at the very least of what the hell happened. And I'm sorry, if she had the same commitment to ethics and ethics in government that she wants Democrats up to and including President Joe Biden to have, she would resign. I don't understand that. Like, where did we get to a point where we were just willing to accept sleazy politicians as long as they were on quote unquote our team? And maybe maybe that's me. To me, that was always just obvious. Like, I don't care if you're a Republican. If you're doing this is wrong. Get out of here.
Yeah, I think there are more people who are willing to say, yeah, I'll go for a Republican dictator right now. Namely Trump. I mean, people are actually emboldened enough to say that. But getting back to Noem, from the outside looking in.
Yeah, I don't
believe
sorry, go ahead.
I believe she's positioning herself to be a vice presidential candidate for Trump.
Oh yeah.
And on the other side, there are people looking to take her down. And I mean, does that extend beyond, South Dakota? But, this particular, issue, she's vulnerable on. And somebody's going after.
Right. Well, yeah, always. I mean, you have a governor with national aspirations, and that's going to draw the hatchet men, right? Like, they're going to come and they're going to try to dig up dirt and find ways to take her out before she becomes a problem, right? Like, I get that. And I know you're not making this argument, but for some people, like, that reality, which is true, trumps what she actually did. Like that can all be true. There can really be people out there who are trying to take down Kristi Noem. I don't doubt it for a minute. Doesn't change the fact of what she did. Right? Like none of that it's all irrelevant to the thing that she actually did, which matters. We're so caught up in questioning everybody's motives that we're not focusing on just empirically observing the world as it is.
Exactly. No, I agree with you. I'm just, as you understand, observing from the outside, looking in and going, okay, here's what's going on. Yeah, she, clearly she abused her power for her family. And I don't think it's first time.
No, I think you're absolutely right. So it gets back to me. It was when Donald Trump sort of infamously said that he could, like, I'm forgetting what he exactly said, but it was like he could shoot somebody down on Fifth Avenue and his audience would still love him. And, I mean, that's the era we're living in right now, when people just cling. I mean, Anthony Weiner, the disgraced Congress, who had about as disgusting. I mean, he was sexting with an underage kid. I mean, they were still, obviously that was a scandal that finally ended his political career. But up until then, I mean, he was running for mayor of New York and had it was very possible he could have been elected. People just are willing. We're so caught up in all of this. They're just willing to stick to these and I don't get it. I get so much crap, Tony, for, people say I'm not conservative anymore because I don't buy into the Trump stuff. I don't like it. I don't like what Trumpism is doing to the conservative movement, which is a movement I care very deeply for. I don't like it. And so people, accuse me because I don't like Trump. I'm not a conservative thing anymore. And I tell them, I don't want to belong to a political movement that's about a person or even about a group of people. I belong to a political movement that's about ideas. That's what I want to belong to. And if it's going to be about a person, then count me out. I don't want any part of that. That's a cult. That's not a political movement. That's a cult. I don't want any part of it.
Well, there's not a lot of critical thinking going on in a lot of this. They're looking for cheerleaders, unquestioning cheerleaders. And the very best conservatives, the most interesting, the most thoughtful, have never been cheerleaders. You may not have always agreed with them. George Will. Who am I?
Krauthammer, I think, is another good example, probably.
Yeah, right. And I'm missing a couple. My brain isn't working this morning, but anyway, we've lost that. We've lost that critical thinking. We can't just be all or nothing cheerleaders for any one thing. We used the word compromise earlier. It's always got to be about compromise. Nobody expects or should get a full loaf. We slice it. Half a loaf is fine sometimes.
Yeah.
It's and that, people are impatient, but democracy does not move quickly. And in general, that's probably pretty good. Now, there's some disadvantages to reacting to a crisis, as we're seeing now. We're kind of muddling through some things.
Right. Well, when you're reacting, policy becomes reactionary, right? Which is not a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm not willing to trade in my democracy. And I'm willing to take half a loaf.
Yeah.
I'm fine with moderate Republicans and moderate Democrats.
I am too. One thing that I learned, because I am the blog that I started is now 18 years old. Is now old enough to vote. Which still, it makes me feel so old. But when I started it, I was 23 years old and full of piss and vinegar and hot-blooded, and was setting out to win these political debates. And what I've learned over the years is that you don't ever really win, right? The other side doesn't go away, right? They don't fold up their banners and just go home. You have an election, maybe your issue or your candidates win, and then they get to govern for a while before we do it all over again. Like, there's no winning. I remember when Barack Obama won in 2008 and he took office, I think it was like 2009, James Carville wrote a book, and it was something like the 100-year Democratic majority. And it was all centered around this idea that Democrats were going to be in office for generations. So the Republican, just what you were talking about, the Republican Party was gone. And by 2010, the Republicans had control of the House again, right? The Democratic supermajority lasted exactly 1-2 year political cycle. But that's the attitude, is everybody thinks that if we fight hard enough, we'll win, and then the debate will be over, and this will just be how it is. And if you look in history, we're having the same debates over and over again. Nothing really changes. But Tony, that we're coming up on an hour. I really appreciate you doing this. I always enjoy your columns, even when they piss me off. And I really like it when you take jabs at me for using big words, which irritates more people than I ever thought would. But I'm sorry. I'm not apologizing for my thesaurus.
Well, I would like to apologize for my dog, who managed to stay quiet through this whole thing until the very end. And also, if anybody's wondering about my voice, which is scratchy, I'm doing great.
Yeah.
I'm very healthy. Had a cancer operation. I'm clean. Everything's great. My voice is recovering from a stretched nerve. So I sound sick. I feel great.
Yeah.
So I just want everyone to know that.
Yeah, that's I should have probably made that clear at the beginning, but I don't know. I think you're sounding pretty good, Tony. You're sounding strong to me, and that's good news. Thank you so much.
It comes and goes.
Yeah.
It comes and goes. Hey, thanks, Rob.
Thanks,
I
Tony.
appreciate it.